Today's Coding with Carla. We're going to keep learning CSS, and we're going to knock out the header of our very first website. We left off with a great background image, and it's perfectly framed out, and it looks great. But all of our text in our navigation is still set to default, and we're going to fix that. But first, let's move this internal style sheet to an external style sheet because that's best practice, and we don't want our HTML page to become clunky and full of unnecessary text. So let's start with a brand new file, and we'll do a save as, and let's just call this main.css. And now back over in our index file, everything within those style tags, let's cut that out and paste it into our main file. And we'll save that index file. Now back in the HTML page, we need to delete out those style tags. We don't need those anymore. But what we do need is a link tag. And we can do a rel, which is a reference, so it knows what it's related to, and it's a style sheet. And then we'll do an href, and we'll just call that, because this main CSS is in the same directory, it's in the same root as the index file, we can just reference main.css. And then it's a self-closing tag. Oops. And now we can save that as well. Now, if we decided in the future that we want to have multiple CSS folders, then or multiple CSS files, then we're going to actually put those into their own CSS folder. In which case, this href would be, CSS folder / main CSS. You want to make sure the path to that CSS file is followed properly. But since we don't have that issue, we're just going to do main.css, and we'll hit save. And now, if I bring this up, nothing should change. And nothing did change. So we did that right. We still have all the styles, but now they're in an external style sheet. We know we need to fix the navigation of our website, so let's hit that first. I'm here in our external style sheet, and I'm actually going to target the nav tag. And what this does is it says anything that uses the tag nav in our HTML is going to be affected by the CSS that we add. So in this case, we don't need a class or an ID. We're just going right after that tag. And so let's go ahead and just start here. We'll use text align, and let's center the text. So that's good. So now let's add some padding to the top of 25 pixels. What this is doing is it's actually saying within that nav, that content, let's add some space between the top of the content and the border. So we're pushing up and making it look like there's extra space up there. Now we want to add in some margin. And we're going to say in the top and bottom, we don't need any margin. But let's do auto for the left and right. So we're saying on each side, we want the same amount of margin. And what this is going to do, it's actually going to center that navigation. And now let's just increase our font size a little to 1.2 ems. We'll go ahead and save. We'll take a quick look here. And now we have our navigation centered in text and in margin. Let's head back over. And now let's target the nav, the list items within the nav. And you can do this. It's CSS element selector. So we're saying any list items inside of the nav are going to be affected by this CSS. So let's start with display inline. I don't know if you can hear my dogs playing or not. They're wrestling. And now we're going to say, actually that's it for that one. That's it. And what this is going to do is going to put our navigation right next to each other. Boom, boom, boom. So now they're no longer stacked, they're horizontal, which is exactly what we're looking for. But now let's go ahead and take the blue and the underline, let's take that default styling out and add in our own. So we're going to say A for anchor tag, and we'll say text decoration, none. We don't want any decoration. We'll say color, and the color of that gray color on the finished product is 95A, 5A6. And now let's add some margin to the right, and we'll say 25 pixels. What this is saying is I need personal space to the right. So just don't touch me over here, is basically all that's saying. So now let's get a little bit fancy. What we want to do here is when we hover over each navigation item, it changes color. So let's add that into our own. What we'll do here is say A, and then we'll use colon and the word hover. So it's saying whenever you hover over an A tag, let's do this. And we're just going to change the color to EA4221. Let's save this. We'll check out our work. So this is the original one. And now here's ours. And now if I hover, there we go. We've got orange. That's perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. Now here you can see the text is a different font style. Let's update that next. Let's talk about fonts. You can use different libraries and different fonts from different places. In this particular website, I used Google Fonts. And you can go to fonts.google.com, check the show notes, and you can access a whole library of different fonts for different reasons. For this site, I used the font Mooley. So over here in the search bar, I just typed it in, filtered it right out. If you click on this plus sign, it's going to add it to your little library here. You can see that it actually gives you a link directly for this font. You can also customize it to have different font weights. So you can do 400, you can add 600, and if you look over here, it'll tell you the load time. 700 and 800, maybe you even want 900. And if you go back to embed, you can see that it's updated your link to include all these font weights. It's not the best time. We're going to use this just because it's practice, but you don't have to use all of these different font weights. I just want to show you how it works. So I'm going to copy that link. We're going to head back over to our HTML page, which I believe is already linked up, but let's update this to include all those font weights. And now you can see you've got the link that's going to Google Fonts. It's got this font style that we use, the Mooley, and then it's actually got all the weights in there as well. And if we go back to here, you can see it has the CSS for us. All we have to do is copy it and paste that right into our main CSS. I'm going to add it to this generalized asterisk one, so it's universal. It's going to, every element is going to have this font now. So I will hit save, and save here. And now our font in our website will have that same font throughout. Okay, now it's time to attack this text up here, and we're going to consider this to be like a banner. So we want to add this banner, and we want to center it here and to be a little bit larger so that it looks more like this. I'm going to jump back to our HTML and CSS, and within our CSS, let's add a new class and call it banner. And this banner is just going to first align our text to center, and then we're going to add a color for that font, and we'll use that same smoky color that we used before. Now let's target the H1 tag within that banner. And here we're just going to mess with the margin, and that's really all we need to do here. We'll say the top of that margin needs to be 20%. The left and right is auto, and then the bottom, we don't want any margin at all. We'll keep it at 0. So let's go ahead and save. Now we'll jump over to our HTML and apply this banner. So we want this banner class to affect both of these, but let's put it within a div. And then what we can do is just cut these two H tags out. Maybe I'm going backwards. Let me try that again. Hit the wrong keys. There we go. Now we'll save. Now let's check out and see what we've actually done. So here's what we want it to look like. And we'll be a little bit closer, but not quite. But you can see now we've pushed down from the top. We've added 20% of a margin. We've got our text to be white and it's centered. So we're on the right track. We're just not there quite yet. Let's add a class to our H1 tag called title. And let's add a class to our H3 tag called subtitle. And let's go back over to our CSS file and make those classes. So we'll start with title. My goodness, title. And then we'll make a class called subtitle. So within this title, let's just change our font size to 3Ms, and we'll make that font weight that we brought over from our Google Fonts to 900. And then in subtitle, we'll do our font size to 2Ms, and we'll do the font weight from our Google Fonts to 600. Okay, let's just take a quick look and see how we're doing. Not bad at all. I think we are on the right track. We've got a button left and we're done with our header. Let's take a quick look at what we want it to look like. So here is our header and our completed button. We've got a green background that's pretty transparent. When we hover over the button, it can all be clickable. Our text is white. It's got just a little bit of a shadow. And if you look at the very bottom, you can see there's a shadow under the box as well. So we're going to learn quite a few new items here for our CSS. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Let's start with that positioning. That button was sitting at the very bottom of our header. How do we get this accomplished? Well, we use this with positionings, and we're going to start with our top background and add the position of relative. That's not a word. Relative. relative. We're going to add relative to our header. This ID goes to the entire header right here. So when we add that position, we're telling that entire header piece that it's relative, which is going to allow us to set the position for our button to an absolute, and it'll stay within that header. So let's start building out the class for that. We're going to call this book-btn. And I'm calling it this because it's our booking button. This is the button that we want people to click on when we want all of our classes to make sense when we come back to them later. We don't want it to just be zebra elephant and not understand why our class is called that. So book-button makes sense because it's our booking button. So let's start with our position. We're going to set it to absolute. And now we want that position to be at the very bottom, so we're going to set that at 0. And we're going to set it to the very left to be 0. So it's going to be boop right there, right at the very bottom. And now we want it to span the entire width. So we're going to set the width to 100%. And now we have the positioning all set up. Now let's add the background color. And we're going to use RGBA for our background color. What this is doing is setting R is red, G is green, B is blue, and the A stands for alpha, which is our transparency. Let's look up here at our hover. We've got this hex color, which is EA4221. The EA is our red, the 42 is our green, and the 21 is our blue. Every color is set up through RGB. And so all we're doing here is breaking it up a little bit and then setting a transparency to it. So we're going to use the color 36, 168, 38, and then we're going to set our alpha to 0.5. Alphas can be set up anywhere from 0 to 1. And so now we have our green background color set up. Let's set our border to none. And let's do our font size to 1.5. And I'm going to use REM. And this is our root element. So we're changing our font, we're increasing our font based on the root. Now I'm going to jump into the text shadow. What we're saying here is we want a shadow with the color of, we're going to use 2s. And we're going to say, it starts out, the shadow is going to go off to the left or right first. So we're going to use the horizontal. We're going to say 0. Going the up and down. So a positive number goes down, a negative number goes up. Well, we want to go down 1 pixel. And then the third number is going to be our blur. How blurry do we want it? We're just going to do 1 pixel here. Now let's do the same thing for our box shadow, which is going to be the shadow that comes from the green box. We're going to use the same color. We still don't want any left or right, so we're going to set that to 0. But we want it to come down a little bit more, so we're going to use 2 pixels. And then a 1 pixel, or actually no, let's not do any blur at all. So we've got this color of 2, which is a dark gray color. And then we've got 0 horizontal shift for our shadow. The shadow is going straight down, 2 pixels, and there's no blur, so it's going to be a nice hard line. And that actually should be just about it. Let's just see where we're at. I almost got myself. So we built this class. Let's apply it. Got to apply the class to the button. So we'll say class equals book-btn. Now we'll save it. Now let's go over and refresh here and see what we've done to our button. Okay, we're on the right track. It's not quite tall enough and the text is still dark. So let's go ahead and modify that. We'll jump back over into our CSS here. Now let's use the same class, book-button, and we want to update the actual A-link or A tag. So we're going to call this display block. Oh, we're saying this because this allows the entire width of this button to be clickable. So that's why we're going to use display block. Now we're going to use text decoration none, and we'll call the color our nice smoke color. Now let's actually add in some padding as well. We'll say 15 pixels on the top and bottom. We really don't need any on the left and right because it's already set to 100% width. So I'm going to jump back over, we'll refresh again. I think that we did not set our button to be an A tag. Let's take a look. Look at that. There we go. So let's put an A tag in here. We'll say href, do #0. We'll close that. Put an A tag at the very end, or closing A tag. Now let's see if we fixed it. There we go, book your trail. And you can see the entire width of our button is clickable because we used the display block. We've successfully completed the header of our website. Next time on Coding with Carla, we're going to look at the main section and wrap it all up with the footer. And before you know it, you're going to have your very first website completed.